Hello, this is AstrologerCoach Sonja Francis, and today we're going to be talking about the upcoming full moon in 22 degrees of Virgo, which will be exact on March 12th at 7:54 a.m. Pacific Daylight Savings Time, which is West Coast time in the US and also LA time, or 10:54 a.m. East Coast time in the US, which is also New York time, and also 2:54 p.m. London time. And the reason why I'm giving London time is because of the daylight savings time difference between Europe and the US that's currently changing the time zones a little bit. So I just wanted everybody to be aware of that. Now, this lunation is also the end of eclipse season. Yay! So we have definitely received our downloads and consciousness upgrades by now and are now able to process whatever came up in the past 6 weeks. And so if you haven't seen it yet, you may want to purchase the MP4 recording of my most recent forecasting forum when we looked directly at our own birth charts to see how the solar eclipse is affecting us for the next 6 months. If that's of interest to you, just also know that you can get this recording as a free copy as well if you sign up for the next 2 forecasting forums, the one in March and April, in advance. And then that way I will just email you the last one from February for free. So if you want to take advantage of that offer, feel free to go to my website at astrologercoach.com and just sign up for the upcoming 2 forums. And I'll also talk a little bit more about the forums at the end of this video. So if you don't know yet what they're all about, feel free to stay tuned for that as well. All right. Now back to the full moon. The full moon is always an opposition between the moon and the sun. And during this time, we seek balance. We want to bring something back into alignment, and we want to integrate 2 perspectives that seem like polar opposites. And so very often these energies get played out in our relationships, in our interactions with other people. So relationships are definitely highlighted during the time of the full moon, and we will feel that energy for the next 2 weeks. So on March 12th, the moon in Virgo opposes the sun in Pisces. And so this aspect really resonates also with the current placement of the moon nodes, which represent our soul's journey. And they have been in the Virgo-Pisces polarity since November of 2015. So we're definitely getting a sense for the next 2 weeks, like how are we finding that balance, that how are we able to integrate those 2 polar opposites so we can be more in alignment with our soul's journey, right? On an individual and on a collective level. Now let's look more closely at the nature of that polarity. As you might recall from my last solar eclipse video in Pisces, that Pisces is all about divinity, intuition, our ability to feel, to sense things. And you could say that Pisces perceives waves of potential, and it's really connected to all energy. It feels vibrations, right? And so the highest vibration of Pisces leads us to the realization that we are all one, that there is no separation, that we're completely interconnected with all things, and that we're able to see the perfection in that connection, or in the all. And so we're not seeing that perfection because we wish it to be perfect, but because we're able to embrace what is as it is. So seeing the perfection means that we can choose to bring light, love, and compassion to everything and everyone, including ourselves, without slipping into helplessness, without slipping into victimization behaviors or martyrdom behaviors. Those are more the lower vibrations of Pisces, right? When we kind of like feel that separation. Now, Virgo, on the other hand, is all about matter, reason, practical and rational thinking. It's about science, discernment. And so it really focuses on the particular. It analyzes things. It uses the mind energy to kind of understand what's what. So Virgo also wants to improve systems and wants to make things function better on a more holistic level, actually, in a more wholesome level. And so that includes our body's physical system. So Virgo is very interested in health and in wanting the bodily functions to work better. And so the spiritual task of Virgo is to really move from judgment, which is more the lower vibration of Virgo, to discernment, which is the higher vibration of Virgo. From humiliation to humility, and from servitude to service, right? So you can see the lower and the higher vibration of Virgo there. And Virgo is really not about knowing what's right or wrong or good or bad, which is what we sometimes do with our mind when we go into this analytical thinking, right? It's really more about understanding what works and what doesn't work, right? Like a scientist, like kind of looking at things and going like, oh, that works, that makes sense, that doesn't work, so we'll discard that. So that type of discernment. And so there is really no need to blame or shame anyone, including ourselves, when we discover something that doesn't work. So it's not about right or wrong or good or bad. And that's a very important distinction with Virgo. So to find the balance between Virgo and Pisces, we really need to ask ourselves, where do I need to be more selective in my life? And where do I need to be more accepting? And how can I tap into my inner knowingness and make practical choices? So combining that inner knowingness being the Pisces quality and the practical choices being the Virgo quality. How can we connect the dots here? And what if choosing, which is the Virgo task, right, is to make a choice. What if choosing was already and always in alignment with divine timing? And that's the trusting the divine timing, that's a Pisces quality. So bringing those two together is really of service to us. It really supports us to live in the highest vibration of both places, the highest vibration of Pisces and the highest vibration of Virgo when we're bringing the two together. Now, all the questions that I ask from this video, as always, are also available on my website at astrologercoach.com. You just go look for the link that says weekly forecasts and you click on that link. And after March 5th, you will be able to go to the full moon entry, which is for March 12th. And then you will find all the coaching questions that I'm asking in this video in that entry. All right. And if you want to receive the weekly forecasts via email, that's also possible. Just email us at info@astrologercoach.com and just write weekly forecast in the subject line. And then my assistant will add you to that mailing list. All right. Now back to the full moon in Virgo. The intellect's function, which is connected to Virgo, of course, the intellect, right, is to measure, to compare, to categorize. It prefers linear and sequential. And the thing is, though, that the natural world that we live in is very complex. You know, we as human beings are very complex. Nature is very complex. The universe is very complex. And the world is really non-linear. It doesn't function in a linear way. The mind does, but the world doesn't. So everything in the universe is really made up out of energy. So everything is through energy, everything is interconnected. So this full moon really invites us to integrate matter and spirit, reason and intuition, clarity of mind with the openness of the heart, right? And so here are some more questions you can ask yourself in relationship to that. What would it look like if we created synergy between discernment and compassion? That's a fantastic question, I think, because that is really something that I feel is really lacking a lot of the time when we make our choices, is that we don't put enough compassion into our ability to understand what works and what doesn't work. And compassion will take care of having less judgment. Now, how can we create synergy between order and chaos? Also a really fantastic question. A lot of people are averse to chaos, but what we don't realize is that chaos is very important, because it's in the place of chaos, there's a lot of creativity. And within the creativity, you know, we can really create something new When there is never chaos, when there's never creativity, if we don't tap into that, we're never able to create something new or make shifts. So this is very important. If there's always order, then we're kind of like stuck in a place. There's never the ability to grow and to expand. So chaos is very important. So we have to shift our way of thinking around what chaos is and how it serves us. And then also, how can we create synergy between practical thinking and imagination? Because both of those are so valuable as well. We have to be able to make practical choices, but without imagination, how we're able to really create and see possibility. Possibility is very important in our creative processes and in our creating our own lives. So for the next 2 weeks, ask yourself, where is the balance point? Where is the balance point of intellect and intuition, effort and surrender? So just keep asking, and remember with these questions, you don't have to answer them right away. It's really more an inquiry where you are either meditating on it, or you're journaling on it, or you're just allowing the questions to be there in the background, and you allow yourself to marinate in those questions and just see what comes up in those 2 weeks. What are some of the realizations or intuitive flashes that you're getting as you keep asking these questions? That's the best way to use it. Rather than pushing for the next 2 weeks or overthinking or giving up even because you're not sure what to do, and I just want to invite you to make small, simple experiments and have faith in the universal support. What if you just trusted the perfect outcome? I think that is very important, that very often we're not trusting that things will work out perfectly. Even if that perfect is not what we think it needs to be. But just trusting life flow and life, our connection to life, our connection to source, that there's always that connectedness, and therefore whatever unfolds is always perfect. So we could also choose, of course, to mirror this on a collective and institutional level, like out there in the world. So what might be possible if we integrated the material, rational worldview with a more holistic one, a worldview that encompasses the complexity of life and the interconnectedness between all living beings? And that's a shift. We really have to shift here because we're so used to a material, rational worldview. So in order for us to shift that, we have to start to look at how complex life really is, and how interconnected we are with each other all the time. If we can't see that, then it's difficult to shift that worldview. So the thing with this full moon chart is that Mercury, which is the ruler of Virgo, is in alignment with Chiron in Pisces at the time of the full moon, and also squares Saturn in Sagittarius. Now, what does that mean? This really sends a clear message to continue on our path of healing and wholeness. And really that we need to take responsibility for what we experience in the process. Because we've really been on a long journey of healing for these past couple of years. There's been a lot of needing to embrace ourselves more fully, especially our spiritual and our emotional experiences. We've been really confronted a lot of the times with needing to honor what's there inside of us, that inner process, that intuitive process, and going more within, having more of an introverted process with ourselves. And so this has not been easy, especially in America, where we have a society, or in the Western world, where we have a society that's very extroverted oriented and oriented towards the outside world. So it's been, for some of us, this has been very difficult, And so this path of healing and wholeness is very important for us to continue and to allow ourselves to relax into that and feel comfortable with that. And to really take responsibility also, because Saturn squaring Chiron and Mercury is saying take responsibility for your experience and for how you're moving in the world and what you believe in. So we're really being invited to forgive our humanness. That's part of the healing process, is forgiving our own humanness, individually and collectively, and to really open our hearts. Pisces is very much about opening our hearts. And so ask yourself here with this combination, how can I take ownership of my triggers? Because that Chiron placement in Pisces very much is connected to sensitivities or insecure spots inside of us that are connected to the inner wounded child, things that we've experienced in childhood where we felt abandoned or separate in some way, and where we felt like we had to do it on our own. And so there's now a sensitivity there around this, or an insecurity around this. And so it's easy to get triggered there. So how can we take ownership of our own triggers in a kind way, in a loving way? And what beliefs keep me still separate from my own divinity and from tapping into my own inner knowingness? So what belief system, because Saturn is in Sagittarius right now, which has us focus on what we believe in. What are we moving with in terms of our belief systems? What's true? What is really true for us now? And so what still keeps us separate from really connecting to our own inner divinity? And what might be possible if I got really quiet and just followed the beat of my own heart without questioning it, without needing to get external approval or confirmation? And that is a very important question to kind of be with and sit with for a while, because it is so easy for us to look to the external world for confirmation, approval, and rightness in certain things. And rather than going within and just looking into our own heart and going like, is that right for me? Does that feel right to me? Does that resonate with me? And that is an exploration that we really want to get more comfortable with. And then a last question, what might I discover if I got to the core of what I believe life truly to be about, right here, right now? Not how it was 5 or 10 years ago, but really what is true for me right here, right now, when it comes to what I believe about life. And that also is a very, very powerful question to ask yourself. And so, there is an assumption very often that we are separate and that we are alone and that we are all fending for ourselves. And so for most of us, this is a very old, deeply embedded belief system. And so therefore, that's why it's so difficult for us to really trust ourselves, to really tap into that inner knowingness, that heart space. So I just want to invite you to join me with an experiment that I want to do with you right now. So if you have a moment, just close your eyes and just check in with yourself, with your physical body, with your emotional body, with your energy body. And if you don't go into memory or into concepts right now, so if you don't go into the past and into the future, just from your own direct experience right now in this moment, where do you begin? And where do you end? And really check. Don't ask your mind. Really check in your own direct experience. Where do you begin? And where do you end? And I invite you to really experiment with this frequently for the next 2 weeks. Feel free to go back to this video and just keep asking yourself that question as you get quiet, as you tune inside of yourself. And just check, where do I begin and where do I end? And rather than asking your mind, really check in your direct experience. What is true? What is true in your direct experience? Now, at the time of the full moon, Venus in Aries is already retrograde. And we've talked a little bit about that in our last video as well, about the Venus station. So for the next 5 weeks, we have a chance to do some internal work on our financial and relationship goals, right? So in particular, the things we value or feel passionate about in our relationships or when it comes to self-love. So you can ask yourself for the next 5 weeks, what does spirit long for inside of me? What does my own spirit, my own enthusiasm, my own spirit long for? And what are my physical impulses telling me? What's important to me? What are my physical impulses telling me about what's important to me? And what needs to be brought back into balance in my life? Where is there an imbalance in my life? And what role does passion play in all of this? Passion is very important. Venus is in Aries, so we really want to get connected to what do we feel passionate about? What is important for us? And what do we value around that? Now, we will also go into this in more detail in our next forecasting forum. So if you want to know how the Venus retrograde is impacting you personally, feel free to join us. We will apply what's coming up to our own birth charts. And so this forum will be on Monday, March 13th at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time, which is also New York time, and 9 p.m. London time. So for more information and to register, just go to my website at astrologercoach.com and just click on the link that's below the Saturn in Sagittarius video on that first page. I'll talk a little bit more about that also towards the end of the video, so stay tuned if you want to hear more. Now, the last thing I want to mention in relationship to this full moon is, again, we still have this Uranus, Pluto, Jupiter T-square, and it's a very powerful part of this chart again, just like it's been these last several lunations that we've had since November of 2016. And so this is bringing in opportunity for very deep changes. When something's in place for such a long time, especially a T-square like that, or a grand cross, or something that requires of us to shift something, if that's in place for such a long time, that means we're really making some very deep changes on a very deep level, individually and collectively. So this T-square really activates us to change and to find creative solutions to situations that have become unacceptable for us. So this is true for us in our own lives, but also collectively speaking. So since this is a stressful combination of energies where they're not really operating in harmony with each other, because a shift can only happen when there is friction. And so there's a bit of a friction there with these energies. And so the best way to deal with this mental and emotional pressure that we're feeling because of that friction is self-care. Really nurturing ourselves, receiving support and help as much as possible. And so I really want to invite you all to take care of yourselves as best as you can, especially until April 6th, when it feels the strongest, because we will need to really feel strong within ourselves in order to create all these shifts and changes in our lives. Because if we don't have a strong foundation within ourselves, it's very difficult to make those adjustments and to really create the changes that we want to see in our lives and in the world. So the other thing with this T-square is that Jupiter and Pluto, which are part of this T-square, will remain in a tight square with each other until early September. So even though the T-square is no longer going to be exact, we still have Jupiter and Pluto connecting to each other in a bit of a stressful aspect. And so this really gives us the opportunity for very deep changes in our belief systems. So just remember that a square or a T-square is not bad. It's not negative. It's an opportunity for change and for us to grow. And this is really how we want to take a look at that. So even though it may cause stress in our lives, this is necessary so that we can move to the next level of our evolution. And really that's the goal for us, as human beings, individually, collectively, we really want to get to that next level of our evolution. And so in order to get there, it's required for us to grow and to stretch. And those are what squares and T-squares are all about. They support us in growing and stretching. So what you can ask yourself is, what might be possible if we let go of what's no longer working around our social structures or long-term goals? And this is a question you can ask yourself between now and September, because that's connected to that Jupiter-Pluto square. So feel free to journal on that as time goes on. So The primary shift of this T-square is really the transformation of our awareness into a higher, more unified form. Again, it's that evolution that I've already been talking about. So we have really a tremendous energetic support right now for the release of old beliefs and the realization of our full potential as a society, collectively, individually. There's really strong energetic support for that right now. I also wrote an article on that subject, on that T-square. So if you haven't received that yet, or if you haven't read that yet, feel free to email us at info@astrologercoach.com and just write T-square in the subject line, and my assistant will email you that article. All right? Or you can also read it on my Facebook fan page or on my website as well. Now, to sum it all up for this full moon, life is both mysterious and perfect in itself. Nature, our own physical bodies, our physical, spiritual, emotional abilities. The one thing that keeps us from really seeing this and experiencing that as such, is really fear. Fear is something that comes from the belief that we are separate, that there's a separation between all things. And we have that belief, of course, because our senses, our physical senses, very often show us that, there's a physical body and it physically it ends here, and then there's another object or another physical body that begins somewhere else. So because of what we see and what we perceive with our five senses, that's why we believe that. But when we go into a deeper place where we connect to our sixth sense, where we connect to that heart space, to that Pisces energy, that's when we can really start to feel and experience that there is no separation. So there needs to be a shift from moving from five senses into a sixth sense as well. And when we can do that, then we can really start to let that fear unravel. That fear is going to completely go away once we can really experience that there is no separation. Because, fear really creates prejudice, exploitation, perfectionism, impatience, the need for control over life in its all forms. Tyranny comes from fear. So all these things are based on we are separate. And this is not just about the outside world, like politics or the news or, things that we experience in the outside world. But it's just a reflection of what goes on inside of us on a daily basis, like the things that we personally also buy into or believe because we're not connected to that sixth sense. So what if we investigated the correctness of our belief in separation? So that is a really, really great question. What if we investigated the correctness of our belief in separation? And again, it requires for us to really shift our way of being with ourselves to really move more inward and move more into that sixth sense. So I would like to share my favorite quote here because I think it's very fitting to the theme here, which is our quest, our earth walk is to look within, to know who we are, to see that we are connected to all things, that there is no separation, only in the mind. And this is by Lakota Seer. Now, this full moon reminds us, of course, that no matter what chaos, intensity, and craziness might be going on outside of us, we have only to look inside to find our truth and to find peace. Again, it's about getting connected to that heart space, to that sixth sense. And it is in our heart that we will find what matters and what we can believe wholeheartedly. So it's really important to tap into that heart space. Peace comes from within, from each one of us. So we are what we choose to be in every moment of now. So as we're going within, we can make those choices. Who do we want to be in every moment of now? So choose wisely for the next 2 weeks. And as best as you can, focus on inner exploration. Be present. Be an observer of your mind, your thoughts, your feelings, your reactions. Notice when the mind takes you into the past or into the future, when it seeks to make something wrong or place somebody at fault. We want to really pay attention to those movements of the mind, because the mind has a lot of power, and we very often feel very identified with the mind. So as we're starting to loosen that identification, and we start to become a little bit more objective and become more the observer of the mind, that is really going to be very helpful. And that is what can help us to drop more into the heart as well. So as best as you can, simply observe like a scientist from a place of neutrality and curiosity. Notice what serves you in the moment. So if you have an ascendant career point or personal planets in 20 to 24 degrees of Virgo, Pisces, Gemini, or Sagittarius, then you're certainly going to feel the impact of this full moon more strongly. So even if you don't have personal planets in those degrees and signs, the house placements in your natal chart affected by this full moon is equally as important to take a look at. So, look to see for the next 2 weeks, where is 22 degrees of Virgo and Pisces in your natal chart? Where do 22 degrees of those two signs fall into your birth chart? And just look at those houses, and those areas of your life mean that you may want to create a balance or integrate those two areas of your life, and maybe even connect the heart and the mind more fully within those two areas of your life. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about here, or you don't even have a birth chart yet, feel free to watch my video, How to Read Your Birth Chart. At the end of the video, I will talk about how you can get your own birth chart for free online. And if you want to watch that video, just email us at info@astrologercoach.com and just write recording in the subject line. It's also a fantastic video to watch right before you join the monthly forecasting forum. For those of you especially who haven't joined yet and who are fairly new to astrology, definitely watch that video first. And I want to encourage you to just join us, because these forums are really very supportive, and it's really why I've created them, because I wanted to make sure that all of us are capable of understanding, where in our charts are we being triggered, or where in our charts are we needing to make adjustments, or where are we needing to find balance, where is something playing out. And it's really the next best thing to getting a one-on-one reading with me. So if you want to join us, take advantage of this format. We will be using our own birth charts actively, so you can ask questions, you can interact with me, and we will look at the upcoming energies every month and see how they impact us personally. So this month, in the next forum, we're going to look at the Venus retrograde, like I already mentioned, in Aries, but we're also going to be looking at the Saturn station and retrograde in Sagittarius that's coming up at the end of March and also in April. So I want to encourage you to join us and see how these planetary movements are applying to you personally. The next forum will be on Monday, March 13th at 2 p.m. Pacific Daylight Savings Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time, and 9 p.m. London time. Okay, so that's LA time, New York time, London time. So you can sign up to join the webinar live, or you can also register to receive an MP4 video recording within 24 hours of the live event. So if you are not available during those times when we're doing the webinar live, feel free to just sign up for the video recording. It's just as valuable, especially because you can ask questions in advance, and I will always make sure that I answer as many questions as possible at the end of the webinar. So definitely make sure when you go to my website and you click on the link where it says Monthly Forecasting Forums, make your payment and also fill out the registration form that's at the bottom of that Monthly Forecasting Forum page, so that I get your questions and that I also know if you will be joining live or if you will be wanting to receive just the recording. All right? Now, it's only $24 for the 90-minute webinar. And again, there's this deal as well that if you want to receive the solar eclipse recording from last month, you can get that for free if you sign up for the next 2 forecasting forums for March and for April. All right? So just know that that's available, and go to my website at astrologercoach.com, click underneath the Saturn in Sagittarius video. That's where the link is, and that will take you to the Monthly Forecasting Forum page. All right? Now, you can also join for daily forecasts on my Facebook fan page and on Twitter if that's something that you're interested in. Also, again, the questions from this video are also available on my website at astrologercoach.com via my weekly forecasts after March 5th. I will post that on March 5th in the evening. And if you want to receive the weekly forecasts via email, then feel free to just send us an email to info@astrologercoach.com and just write weekly forecasts in the subject line, and my assistant will add you to that mailing list. And if you don't want to receive emails every week from me, but you do want to kind of get a sense for what's going on in my business and want to receive announcements about webinars and courses and special offers and receive my videos, that's a newsletter that I'm sending out twice a month. So if you want to receive my newsletter twice a month, email us at info@astrologercoach.com and just write newsletter in the subject line. All right? So have a fantastic full moon. If you have any general questions about the full moon, always feel free to send me an email to Sonja@astrologercoach.com. That's SONJA@astrologercoach.com. If you have a personal question, however, that requires of me to pull up your chart, I will ask you to either book a reading with me one-on-one via my website at astrologercoach.com, or you can join the monthly forecasting forum if you have questions that are connected to what's coming up within the next 30 days or so in relationship to your own chart. So feel free to join us there as well. So have a good one. This is Astrologer Coach Sonja Francis. Goodbye.